Step into the future of manufacturing with 4Industry's Connected Worker podcast.
All right, hello good people, welcome to another episode of the Connected Worker podcast. We're on episode 4 already and we have a special guest who is Elmer de Valk, our CRO of 4Industry. He recently wrote a blog on how the Connected Worker platform can tackle the labor shortage in manufacturing, and we're gonna talk about that today. Elmer, how are you doing?
Yeah, great. Looking forward to the podcast.
Me too. This is a very interesting subject. I think we've done 4 podcasts and 3 podcasts in all now, and this always comes up in one way or another. So it's great to finally dedicate a full episode to it. Firstly, how big is the labor shortage in manufacturing?
Yeah. Now we're talking, I think, about maybe one of the biggest challenges of that we are facing as mankind, I would almost say. So this is at the moment a lot of what we consume on our day-to-day lives is actually produced in factories across the globe. What we're seeing is that due to a lot of developments on the political front, but also on the economical front, the stuff in Ukraine, there's interest rates, there's rising labor rates and wages. There's so much going on, and a lot of our customers, a lot of manufacturers are rethinking their supply chains, trying to produce more local instead of global. And if you're changing the whole setup of your supply chains, and you need more people local, or you need to produce more local, you also need more people local. And so there's a huge trend. What we see happening that more people need to start to work in local factories to produce for the local markets. But the difficulty is that a lot of the people that you would like to have in those factories not necessarily all want to work in those factories. And so there's also a statistic out there, and this is for the US alone, that almost half of what is needed will not be fulfilled in the coming years.
Yes.
We're talking about more than 2 million people in that sense. So labor shortage, I would say is a massive problem. And of course, if you don't fill those vacancies, you don't get the products. And if we don't get the products, what will happen to us as consumers? We won't be able to buy the things we need.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've read somewhere that it might reach 9 million people globally by 2030, which is huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why is there a labor shortage in manufacturing?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of again big trends going on. One of the big trends is that we are dealing with an aging population. So older people working in the factories, that they will start to retire at one point. So on the one hand side, we see people leaving the factories, and on the other hand side, we also see that for the next generation who was brought up with mobiles in their hands from literally from day one, that they're also less inclined than in the past to work in the factory environment. There's a lot of let's say fancy digital jobs these days, like professional drone pilots, right? Which is a profession that wasn't even there, right? And if those, let's say the millennials, the Gen Z people are all more inclined to go in that direction, then there's not enough people for the factories, right?
So I want to get into that subject a little more later. First of all, we have a lot of big multinationals as customers for industry. Like, what do they tell you about this labor shortage? Like, how urgent is it for them, and what are kind of the things they're doing to attract more people?
Yep. Now, I think it's everywhere, basically. Examples, let's say, that are more public are examples like, for example, Tesla building a mega factory in Berlin that also requires thousands of people to be able to fulfill those jobs. But there's also local initiatives here in the Netherlands where companies are setting up new factories requiring also hundreds of people. So labor shortage, difficulty to attract talent, other people moving out of the factories. This is a mainstream topic that we are encountering everywhere. And what our companies doing? Yeah, they're trying to make those jobs more attractive, right? So they're looking for ways, they're looking at wages, but of course increasing wages will have an impact on your profitability.
Yes.
But they're also looking at ways on, how do I make the work itself more attractive? And then, of course, digital also, of course, comes up as a topic to do that.
Yes, so let's get into that first of all, because we're going to explore, an unlikely solution to the labor shortage, something we don't maybe emphasize enough in our for industry communication, but that is making work more attractive with a connected worker platform.
Yep.
Can you kind of sketch the current situation in factories and how a connected worker platform might make that more attractive for young people?
Yeah, so I think that what we are encountering today still in a lot of factories is pen and paper. And so you want to do something, you want to make a registration that something is not going the way you expect, right? A deviation or a tag. Or you want to complete a certain inspection or to do a certain assessment. It's literally pen and paper checklists, it's filling in forms. And if it is not really physical paper, then what we also see is what we call digital paper. Right?
Yes.
Which is basically just filling in an Excel. You can use a keyboard, that's nice, but it's actually not really a smart system in any imaginable way. What we also literally see happening is that if you want to perform a certain task, that the required knowledge is sometimes contained in a manual, and we're literally talking about a pen and paper manual, a paper manual that is stuck in an office somewhere, and someone needs to walk over, get the manual, and look through the instructions and figure out what to do, right? So from the perspective of let's say a young person stepping into the factory, this world is like totally alien to them.
Yes. Yeah, I think our colleague Lawrence mentioned that in a previous podcast, that young people are used to sitting on the couch and ordering a bag of crisps or even a flight ticket and a few taps. And when they come to the factory, they encounter these binders and piles of papers, and it's very off-putting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that's
So how does the connected worker platform really improve that situation, like the things you just mentioned that are frustrating?
Absolutely. So the way I picture it, it's we have workers on the factory that need to have access to information. It's about having an understanding about the different machinery that is there, how they operate, what needs to be done, how to do it. So knowledge, getting people connect to information and knowledge is key. And then, of course, it's also essential that you don't just have access to that knowledge, but that you also apply that knowledge at the right time. So a certain deviation, there's something going wrong in a factory, you go in, you make a registration, and automatically the steps are proposed to actually tackle that, right? So that's what a connected worker platform provides. So instead of pen and paper checklist, walking to the office to get your binders, or instead of all those things, it's literally about helping you as a person with a mobile device to basically know exactly what you need to know, and that makes you super efficient. And it also makes sure that you don't spend your time on wasteful activities, like administrating stuff in system A and then doing exactly the same administration in B, because that's putting you off, right?
Yeah, you have more time left to do the stuff you want to do.
You want to do. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that not everyone wants to be a drone pilot. There's also people that genuinely want to work on big machinery and those kind of things. But those people that want to work on big machinery, they don't necessarily want to be in an office typing or with a pen and paper writing, right?
Exactly. So I think another aspect of this problem that you mentioned in your blog has to do with training them, upskilling them. That also has to do with the changing world situation. I think a famous example is that a big beverage company, when COVID hit, they suddenly had to switch over from producing beverages to producing hand sanitizer.
Exactly.
So you have factories and their operators have to be agile, they have to be flexible, they have to be willing to continuously learn new stuff.
Exactly.
And also on this point, you have you have the current situation which is insufficient and unattractive, and you have a new situation in which the connected worker platform can help. Can you kind of sketch that out?
Yes, absolutely. So what's the classical way of doing these things, right? So on the one hand side, so we have a new line, right, that needs to be running. There's a new machine or a new piece of equipment that comes into the factory, and then typically what happens is that a classroom training is organized, and people get trained on how to operate that machine. And then secondly, what happens is that hopefully or usually there is a person there that kind of knows a lot of stuff that is then there to give more one-on-one coaching on and training other people to get productive. But that is a difficult and actually an outdated and not so efficient way of doing these things. So what research has shown that looking at classroom training, if I tell you something in a classroom, then the unfortunate thing is that within an hour, 50% of what I have been trying to teach you is lost.
Yes.
Within a day, 70% of that information is just not there anymore. And within a week, you have forgotten 90% of what I'm trying to tell you in a training.
Yeah.
So this is a staggering statistic that basically says that kind of training method is not helpful. And it's not helpful, and I think people naturally also feel that it's not working because there's a lot of people that are working in factories, but actually also myself. I don't necessarily want to take classroom training because I intuitively feel it's not helping me. Exactly. And so what is of course needed then is to make sure that you get that knowledge on the job. So then we get more into that one-on-one coaching scenario. But in that one-on-one coaching scenario, the difficulty there is that the people, and there are so much things changing. There's also people leaving the factories. It's a very difficult model to scale. It's very difficult to get that one person that knows everything that needs to train 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 people. So then to the solution, what we see is that with a connected work platform where knowledge is there in a digestible form, contextualized and made, let's say, relevant in the context of the job at hand and the equipment that you're working on, that makes it so that even I, and I'm not a trained technician, am able to do certain things autonomously. And this massively shortens training time, but also massively has an impact on my effectiveness and my ability to add value to the company.
Yeah, and it must also be easier to learn unfamiliar or new skills like autonomously, like when something has to change entirely, you can just
Absolutely. I would never advise that if there is a complex thing that you just take your phone and to just do it the first time without any kind of guidance, but at least there is something there, and then the second time you do it, the processes are familiar, you know what safety precautions to take, because that's also clearly documented, you know exactly what kind of tools to take with you, you know exactly which steps to take. I think that's really the way that the younger generation wants to work. So it makes us happy, but it's also going to make us a lot more productive.
As you just talked about upscaling the knowledge of other experienced operators, and this is also a topic I see passing by very often. Can a connected worker platform help with that in any way?
Yeah, no, like I said, so bringing knowledge into the context of the activity that you need to do is helpful for the younger generation, but is also extremely helpful also for the people that still work in the factories. And so what we hear and what we see is that there's all those manufacturing organizations need to be competitive. They're making a lot of investments in new, smarter equipment. They're making stuff digital. They're doing this, they're doing that. But specifically also looking at the older generation, that is also a challenging and sometimes even a frightening thing that is happening around them. And I think one of the interesting quotes that I got when I was talking to a customer is that one of the older operators actually was so happy that he now had this connected worker platform because it actually allowed him to be more effective in this changing world, and he is now confident that he will actually make his pension in that organization.
Right.
Whereas in the past, he was really doubting whether he was able to actually keep up. So,
Yeah. So this might also be like a small problem for manufacturers because they might want to digitize very quickly to attract the younger generation, but that might scare off the older operators who have a lot of knowledge and
Yep.
are still valuable in themselves.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that so digital, it can be frightening. It is a change, and with every change comes, I think, resistance. I think that if you look at what we do as an organization, also with For Industry, is that we have done a lot of research about what works, what doesn't work. We've also looked a lot at the demographics in a factory. So we didn't just test it out on people, let's say, with your age profile, but also people with my age profile and the age profile of our parents, basically. And we did find out that the way that we have designed it, it is super simple, super intuitive, super easy to use. Therefore, let's say lowering the bar for adoption. And and actually, what we see happening is that when we implement For Industry, is that adoption rates are high, and that people really want to use the system because of a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I talked to Andrei Kovalev of Danone last podcast, and he also emphasized this. It's so important that your people actually want to use the product. It's not just about implementing fancy digital technology. The people on the shop floor have to want to use it for its success.
You're 100% right. I mean, the ROI does not come from having a shiny system running in the cloud doing nothing. The value comes from people using it, looking at the data, and using that data to improve their performance. Right. That's what it's all about.
All right. Do you have any last words on the topic?
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe two things to say. So I think one is. We have a big problem, maybe also to summarize, but we have, I think, a big problem on attracting talent and also making sure that the people that we have in the factories, that they stay engaged. And as said, I really believe that connected worker platforms are really a way to solve all that. And I think the second thing is that, you can take my word for it, but I think that where we are actually quite successful at customers is to say, let's just deploy a very simple setup for, let's say, 2 or 4 weeks. Let's just expose the system to a couple of people in kind of a sandbox environment so that they can play around with it. And what we actually find is that once people have played around with it and they've seen how easy it is and how valuable it is and how much it will help them in their work, a decision to actually explore that topic further is very quickly made. So I would really like to invite each and every one of you to maybe think of such a sandbox setup and to test it out.
All right. I think that's a good point to end. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you.
And thanks to our viewers for watching and listening. If you like this video, show some love on YouTube or connect with us on LinkedIn and tell us what you think. And if you want to chat to Elmer or any other of our experts, you can do that by going to our website, which is forindustry.com. Until next time.
See you later.
Thank you for watching the Connected Worker podcast. If you like this episode, please press the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media to stay up to date with the latest insights on the digital transition in manufacturing.